Namaskar Ajahn. Thank you for giving us this opportunity for this Q&A session. Let's all pay a respect to you first. 各位观众，各位听众，让我们一起礼拜尊者，三拜。Dear Ajahn, there are a lot of good questions today. We'll start one by one, and I will read the Chinese first, followed by the English translation, if that's okay with you. The first question, 第一个问题，尊者您好，可以请问什么样的品德是最能够保证我们持续坚持走在行修的路上？ Namaskar Ajahn. What kind of virtue or quality will be able to secure us to remain on the path of our practice continuously? Thank you.
Many of these questions which require singling out a particular virtue have to be answered simply that it's not just one virtue. There are a number of different virtues. This is we can call a holistic teaching, one in which many different qualities have to be developed in harmony.
有许多问题都需要我们回答，是否需要包括一个单一的特定的美德？一个简单的答案是，并没有一个单一的美德。我们需要一个整体的教导，需要包括许多不同的美德或者品质，和谐的相处，共同合作。
Nevertheless, I will give one or two examples. Firstly, good friendship, having fellow practitioners who can support you at times when you are feeling discouraged, just as you are able to help them and encourage them when they are losing their inspiration. So good friendship is one important support. Another is the necessity of reflecting upon the suffering and the problems in life that come through lacking Dhamma in our hearts that we have experienced in the past and seen in those around us, and also the benefits and the value of Dhamma practice, which again we've seen to one degree or another in our own practice and that of those around us and in our teachers. And we need to keep returning to this reflection as a way of promoting this inspiration and motivation to keep practicing. Thirdly, listening to Dhamma, listening to the teachings and comparing them with your own understanding again and again, because sometimes people can be very sincere and devoted to practice, but it's based upon wrong ideas and wrong understanding, and so can be ultimately frustrating.
尽管如此，允许我给两三个例子。第一个就是善友的重要性。那当我们有一个伙伴跟我们一起修行，在彼此气馁的时候给予支持，当我们失去灵感的时候，给予我们更多的鼓励和激励。第二个就是非常必须让我们不断的去省思在生活中遇到的很多的苦，特别是因为缺乏法带来的一个苦。那我们要不断反思这样的一个主题，让我们可以更好的走上修行的前路， 来保持我们修行中的灵感和激励。那第三个就是我们需要去聆听佛法，并且与自己的理解反复的做对比，看一下我们的生活中的实操与我们听闻的这个教导之间到底有什么样的一个差异。
One more point would be to prevent the mind getting caught up in desires for quick results and then become frustrated when they do not arrive according to the agenda that we have established. So the wise practice is to putting right effort into every step of the path that we take, and occasionally checking to make sure that we are in line with the goals of practice, but to put the emphasis in the effort and in the process itself rather than in the goals that we wish for or desire.
还有一条就是我们必要避免自己的心智急于去寻找或者欲求非常快的结果，因为我们经常会觉得气馁，当我们没有办法获得我们所期待的结果的时候，我们必须每一步的都使用正确的努力，偶尔去检查我们的修行跟我们的目标当中是否有任何的差异，关注更多的在过程，而不只是在结果。
Okay, go ahead. Next question.
Okay. The second question. 如何调节亲密关系 How to mediate between intimate relationships?
How can we
mediate? Yes.
Between
or manage intimate relationships. Yes.
I think it's important to have a spiritual goal, a clear spiritual goal in a relationship to supplement the emotional or physical dimensions, and one in which the quality of good friendship is the foundation, because over the course of time, the physical, the emotional dimensions will have ups and downs, but the good friendship that can be created is something which will form a rock and a firm foundation throughout the lifetime of the people involved.
非常重要的是必须要有一个清晰的精神上的目标，在一个关系当中以支持情感以及身体的一些维度，其中一个善友的一个友好的友谊的关系是其中的一个基础，在生活中的起起伏伏当中，友谊可以作为一个磐石，帮助我们奠定生活的基础，以建立长期的关系。
So the more we practice the Dhamma, then the less we look at life and our relationships from the self-centered point of view, and the more we are aware of, the more we are sensitive to the views, the needs, the feelings of others. And so the Dhamma practice is allowing both or all people involved to mature in every aspect of their life, which can only be a good thing for any kind of relationship.
所以当我们有更多的佛法修行的时候，我们的关系就会变得更少的以自我为中心。那我们允许让双方或者更多的人在我们的生活当中变得更成熟。Okay, shall we go to the next question?
Yes.
Okay. 好 ，Number 3， 俗话说善有善报， 也说人善被人欺，如何找到可以善良又有底线的边界，或者是平衡点？谢谢。It is said that goodness will be rewarded with goodness, but it's also said good people will be bullied. How can we develop the boundary or strike the balance between being good and having a bottom line?
Yeah, I don't know who said that about good people being bullied on an anonymous authority. Yeah, so I think it's important to understand what is meant by goodness. And there's often an understanding that goodness means meekness or means not making a fuss about things and just putting up with mistreatment and so on. And I think that's a false or distorted idea of goodness. It's certainly not the Buddhist understanding of goodness. So in Buddhism, we have teaching of kusala dhammas and akusala dhammas. Kusala usually we translate as wholesome because it's a rather difficult term to render accurately. But it's all of the mental states which lead to or incline towards liberation and freedom from suffering and its causes. So goodness will include wisdom and discrimination and will allow someone to determine what is the most wise or effective or appropriate way of dealing with the people around them. There's no one fixed good reaction to being bullied or being mistreated. But the Buddhist teaching is that the more mindful you are, the more present you are, then the better choices you make and the wiser choices you make. So what that choice might be can be conditioned by all kinds of different different factors. But if we look at it in another way, for instance, then if someone is bullying you and you allow them to bully you, then you are participating in the bad karma that they are creating. That you are complicit in that bad karma. So it's not simply a matter of being meek and mild and letting people tread all over you because you're a peaceful person. That's overlooking the whole realm of wisdom and discrimination, which is at the heart of Buddhist ethics.
其实人善被人欺这句话我其实从来没有听到过，但是非常重要的是我们必须要去理解善到底意味着什么。很多时候我们都理解善好像就是温顺就是容忍，然后还有就是不去吹毛求疵，但其实这是一种被扭曲的善的一个理解，并不是一个佛陀教导的对善的理解。在佛陀教法中，其实善经常有时候会被称为善法或者不善法，而这个词其实很多时候如果翻译成英文的话，会是健康的、健全的。它指的是所有的导向，可以帮助我们导向解脱，从苦以及苦的因解脱的这样的一些心智的因素。它包括了智慧，也包括了一些鉴别能力。特别是当我们 在处理与别人身边的他人的关系的时候，什么是最好的方式去与他们相处，并没有一个固定的答案。当然，当我们变得充满更多的正念，更多的活在当下的时候，通常我们就会做出更好的选择。但是什么样的选择才是更好的？这个是需要由当时的各种的因素而限定和制约的。有时候当你被别人欺负，或者你允许他们欺负你的时候，也是你与他们共同生活在一个恶业的一个状况下。那这个时候不单是说你要去选择做一个温顺的人，你必须在当下做出对自己最好的一个选择。Okay. Shall we go to number?
Yes. Am I speaking too long? Would you like me to chop it up a bit more? Is it too much?
It's fine this way. Thank you, Tenaja. That's so kind of you. Okay. Shall we go to the next?
Yeah.
Okay. Question number 4. 从修行的核心方法而言，上座部、汉传佛教以及藏传佛教有什么区别？第二，上座部没有提到中阴教法，但藏传佛教非常的重视。您怎么看中阴教法？第三，上座部除了本师释迦牟尼佛之外，不会供奉其他的菩萨，但在汉地和藏地，除了佛陀，还会供奉很多菩萨，例如观世音和文殊菩萨。您怎么看？ Sorry, it's a long question. So firstly, in terms of core techniques of practice, what are the differences among Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana? Secondly, Bado, the transference of life and death, is not in Theravada, but it has a lot of importance in Vajrayana. What is Tanajan's view on Bado? And thirdly, in Theravada, Gautama Buddha is the one and only one to be worshipped. But in Mahayana and Vajrayana, they also worship many bodhisattvas. For example, Manjusri Bodhisattva and Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva. How does Tenajan think of that?
Big questions. In this forum, it's clearly not really possible to go into any but the most preliminary, superficial kinds of distinctions and comparisons and differences between these different kinds of Buddhism, of Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana. In fact, there is a problem to begin with, in that Mahayana is of a different category to Theravada and Vajrayana, in that Mahayana is an umbrella term for many different forms of Buddhism, so that it's not possible to draw a distinction between Theravada and Mahayana, because there's so much variation between the different Mahayana groups. And I'm not particularly not much of a scholar, let's say, so I'm not that confident that I could really say anything very helpful here. I think what I would like to say is that it's really important that we create good relationships between the members of the different Buddhist groups. We don't want to have conflicts, and I think we can be very proud of the fact that there haven't been wars and hatred between different Buddhist groups in history, as there have been between the major sects of other major world religions. And this is something to be very proud of. And sometimes Theravada monks and lay people can get a little bit arrogant and say that we have the true Buddhism, and the Mahayana, they caught up in superstition and so on. And And I don't listen so much to the points being made as the tone of voice, and I don't like the tone of voice of people who start talking in this way, whoever it is. And I'm much more interested in creating bridges and friendships across the different Buddhist groups and appreciating the beauty and the nobility of each of the major traditions.
这是一个好大的问题，但基本上在我们今天会议的这样的形式下，基本没有可能，甚至去做一些比较肤浅的一个比较。事实上，有一个非常根本的问题，在开端的地方，也就是大乘佛教本身它是一个非常不同的概念，相对于上座部以及金刚乘来讲。因为大乘佛教是一个那个大的概念，是一个母概念，其中有非常多的一个分支，所以我们没有办法把这3个概念放在一起比较。而且我本人并不是一个专门的学者，在其他的2个宗派当中，所以我不是非常自信能说一些对大家有帮助的话。但是我能够说的是，对于我来讲，与其他的宗派来达成非常好的关系，而且不会造成任何的冲突，是一个可能的事情。而且我个人非常的自豪，在这样的一个事实，也就是在佛教的不同的教派之间，这么在历史当中从来没有过战争或者大的一个冲突，这是一个非常值得骄傲的事情。因为相比而言，在世界上其他的一些宗教之间，内部可能会有相当的冲突，甚至是战争。当然，有时候上座部的僧人或者信徒可能会变得非常的傲慢，他们会说上座部才是真正的佛教，大乘佛教可能只是非常迷信的一派，有迷信的观点。我非常不喜欢这样说话的一个语调，不管是谁说这样的话。我个人的兴趣是在于在不同的宗派之间建立桥梁以及友谊，并且去真正欣赏和赞美不同宗派当中的美和他们的高贵之处。
Yes, so all I can say is I began my studies of Buddhism reading translations of books of Chinese Zen Buddhism, and over the years I've valued greatly many of the teachings of great Tibetan masters, particularly the old Kadampa masters from a few hundred years ago, whose teachings are very similar to teachings of the masters in my tradition. So when you get down to the personal level, and as a monk, when I meet Zen Buddhist monks or Vajrayana monks, we tend to get on very well, and the doctrinal differences don't seem to be very important when we come together with that goodwill and love of the Dhamma.
当我开始我个人的修行的时候，学习的时候，我阅读了非常多的中国佛教的一些翻译。在过往的日子里面，我也非常尊敬许多来自西藏的大德，而且我惊讶地发现，金刚乘的很多的习俗、很多的教法，跟我自己的上座部的传统是相似的。在我个人的训练当中，当我与金刚乘的很多的僧侣在共修的时候，我也发现我们之间的共性会远超过我们的差异。当我们对彼此有一个美好的意愿的时候，当我们对彼此抱有善意的时候。Okay. Shall we go to the next? Okay. Question number 5, 第5个问题，想请问尊者，我们每一个人是否一定会有自己的使命，会有知道使命的一天？如果我们始终在追寻或者等待。Namaskar Tana Ajahn, does every one of us has our own life purpose? Will we know our purpose one day if we keep looking or waiting for it?
Yeah, I mean, there's no such. I don't believe that there's a kind of a plan for everyone, or a destiny, a fate, or something that you have to search for and find, and one day, if you try hard enough, you will. But you create a purpose for yourself, and it's not something you find, it's something that you choose and you create. So as Buddhists, then our life purpose is the abandonment of defilement and the following the path to liberation, as the Buddha taught us. And so that's not, a purpose that you will find some way along the path, but it's that which motivates you from the very first step of the path. Of course, as you progress, then that sense of purpose becomes purified, becomes stronger and more apparent. But the Buddhist understanding of life and the purpose of life is the foundation for one's choices and for the path, particular path that one follows.
我不相信有对于任何人来讲，对于每个人来讲有一种特定的计划，命运或者宿命，并不是说你去寻找，并且花了很多的努力，你就会找到它。与之相反的是，我相信你可以去创造自己的使命，而并不是去找到或者去选择。作为一个佛弟子，我们的使命是在于摒弃染污，并且遵随佛陀的教导，来走向我们到解脱的道路上。这个并不是你在你修行的路上会找到的一个使命，与之相反的，这个使命是在我们起步的第一步开始，就在背后激励着我们。当然，随着你不断的前行，这种使命感会变得更强，会变得更清晰。但是佛弟子的对于使命的这样的一个认知，这样的一个理解，是每一个人的选择以及他们所要走的修行之路的基础。Thank you. Shall we go to the next? Number 6. 第六个问题，疫情封闭期间，在各种自媒体平台看到许多让人觉得不舒服和沮丧的事情而感到无力。我会主动不去看那些人性中恶的一面，但不希望自己变得麻木。我该怎么办？ During the lockdown of the pandemic, there are depressing and frustrating stories on social media, which made me feel helpless. I want to block myself from the dark side of humanity, but I don't want myself to become numb or different. What should I do?
First of all, I think it's important to ask yourself how much time you should spend on social media every day, and what your purpose in consuming stories, information about things that depress you. I think it's important as a householder, as a lay Buddhist, to be to keep up with what's going on in the world. That's a duty of a citizen. But I think that these days that a lot of the listening and watching and reading of news is of very limited benefit. It's just repeating the same things that you know already again and again and again. And if it's depressing your mind, then the question is, well, why do it? If it's an addiction, then it's something that needs to be treated and dealt with. So social media addiction is a major problem for many people these days, and got much worse during the lockdown. The dark side of human life and human existence, if we look at it with ignorance and with a lack of mindfulness, then it leads to despair. But if we look at it with the eyes of the Buddha, it leads us to compassion. So if we consider the Buddha himself after his enlightenment, and the Buddha on the night of his enlightenment was able to recall millions of past lives, not just one or two, huge number, and also to be able to observe the birth and death of countless beings in the different realms of existence. So the things that the Buddha saw and perceived on the night of his enlightenment exceeded the kind of suffering that we're seeing in the world around us and in social media by an unimaginable degree. But the Buddha's response was to go out and teach and to share the Dhamma, because it fueled his compassion. So the suffering in the world has always been there. It's always present. It's whether or not it impinges on us that we're aware of what's going on. But it didn't start or didn't intensify with the pandemic. If we're talking on the world scale, yes, on small scale, one's own life, people around in one's own city, for sure. But a big picture of humankind, 7-8 thousand million people, it's the same old story. The question is how to channel that awareness of suffering and pain into compassion and prevent it from leading to depression and despair.
非常重要的是，首先我们必须要问自己，我们在社交媒体上花多长的时间？我们在消费这些故事和信息的时候，特别是那些让我们觉得沮丧的故事的时候，我们的目的是什么？作为在家弟子，非常重要的，我们必须要跟上这个世界的脚步，去了解发生在身边的一些重要的事情，这也是我们作为世界公民的重要的职责。但是不断的去聆听或者阅读看这一些不断重复的这些故事，它们的效果却是有限的。而且如果看这些东西让你觉得非常的沮丧，那我们为什么要去看它呢？如果不断的去阅读这些社交媒体的行为是一种瘾，那如果是这种瘾的话，它就需要被治疗，就要被正确的对待。而且对社交媒体的上瘾，在全世界范围内是一个比较重大的问题。那在疫情的封锁期间，又会变得越来越严重。人性的黑暗面，其实随着有人以来就一直在那边。当我们以无明的眼光去看待黑暗面的时候，它往往会导向绝望。但是如果佛陀以他的慧眼去观看这些黑暗面的时候，他会发现慈悲。如果我们回到佛陀证悟的那个晚上，他通过他的宿命通去感悟到过往几百万的这个过去生的故事，他观察到了无量的以不同形态的这个生命在不同的界当中的生命的生与死。那他在那个晚上所看到的一切的痛苦，都超越我们现在在社交媒体上所看到的许多倍。 但是他的反应却是站起身来，出去以他的慈悲做对众人对世间做教导。苦永远是在那边，区别只是他是不是会捏了你一下，特别是在疫情当中，有时候这种苦的感觉会被加深。但其实从大的图景来看，70多亿的对70多亿的全球的人口来讲，这是一个不断重复的同样的一个故事。我们所需要做的是如何把我们的觉知是如何把我们对于苦的觉知导向于慈悲，而避免这个绝望的发生。Okay, thank you. So next question. So it's on practice. 尊者您好，弟子的问题是，静坐时有时候会觉得身体会晃动，察觉到以后可以用心念让它不动，过了一会儿后又觉得晃动了，如果随着它去，就会觉察到它动起来。请问这是什么原因，以及如何处理？请尊者慈悲地给予指导。Namaskar, Tanajang. Sometimes during meditation, I feel my body swing. Being aware of this, I can direct my mental power to stop it. But after a while, it starts again. Without interfering, I will be aware of the swing. What is the cause of it, and how can I deal with it? Please kindly guide me. Thank you.
Sorry, what was the condition? I couldn't hear.
His body shaking and swinging when he's doing sitting meditation.
Yeah. There can be physiological causes for this, and if it persists over a long period of time, it's good to go for a physical checkup with the doctor. It can be as simple as a physiological problem revealed by the meditation. It can also be a matter of an imbalance of elements in the body, and again some physical means. It can be qigong or yoga can sometimes help with these phenomena. Otherwise, there are sometimes these kinds of reaction when someone is putting too much effort. It's trying too hard and creating tensions within the body. Otherwise, it can be a symptom or an expression of samadhi, of a kind of piti. So the word piti is usually translated into English as rapture, but some of the expressions of piti are actually not very pleasant at all and can be rather frightening the first time that they occur. But if the physiological imbalances are not present, and it is not a function of too unbalanced an effort, too much self-centered striving, then merely being aware of the phenomena and patiently observing the phenomena as something which arises and passes away, is not self, something which is expressing the three characteristics. So it can be an object of meditation in itself, rather than being a distraction from the meditation. And this is a principle that we apply in other areas when there is a recurrent problem, the same problem arising again and again. Returning to the meditation object is only effective for a short term. this is a signal that one should put down or put aside one's main meditation object and meditate on the obstruction itself, and can be, in the case of very lustful, sensual thoughts, the application of the asubha or unattractive aspects of the body meditation, or in the case of chronic long-term negativity, anger, then putting emphasis in its antidote in the metta meditation.
好，这个原因可能是一些生理学的原因。如果它持续时间比较长，那可能你需要去找你的医生，去看一下医生。它有可能是身体的一些不平衡，当然也有一些身体的方式、物理的方式可以去有帮助，比如说气功或者瑜伽。那除此之外，可能还有其他的原因。那其中之一就是说，你可能会在修行的时候用力太猛，用功过度之后，可能会造成一定的紧张在身体当中。除此之外，也有可能有其他的原因，它可能是奢摩他的一个表象，就是 piti 喜，或者在英文当中有时候会翻译成狂喜。那有时候非常有意思的是，虽然译成狂喜，它的表现形式有时候并不一定是非常悦人的，有时候特别是在第一次出现的时候，可能是会让人觉得有些害怕。那如果这是生理性的一些情况的话，那你必须要对此保持觉知然后观察着它升起和落下，然后看着升起和停息，然后要关注它，觉察它并不是自己的，觉察它本身的无常，也就是我们常说的三共相的方式来禅修。然后同时它有可能并非作为它有这种情况也未必是一种禅修的一种打扰，它有可能成为我们的一种禅修的一个对象。这是我们在其他的领域也可能会适用的一些原则。当在我们禅修过程中有一些不断发生的一些问题，那有时候我们会发现回到我们的禅修原来的禅修对象并不是那么容易。那这可能是一个信号，让我们去禅观这一个障碍本身。比如说，当我们的这个障碍如果是一些淫欲或者一些感官的感觉的时候，那我们可以去以不净观的方式去禅修。那如果是一些慢性的问题，或者是一些嗔怒愤怒的时候，我们可以以慈心观的方式来做禅修。好 ，Okay, shall we go to the next? Number 8， 第8个问题。我家楼上有一户人家天天向下抛垃圾，但我不知道是哪一家，我非常的气愤。我挨家挨户的问，都说没有抛垃圾，但是第二天阳台上又是各种垃圾，物业也没有办法。我想要用高音喇叭咒骂他们才能解气，但是我也知道这样解决不了问题，我该怎么办？ I have a neighbor living upstairs who throw garbage down into my balcony every day. I don't know which one, but I feel very angry. I checked with every unit, but none of them said they threw the garbage. But on the next day, it happened again. The property management office can't do anything about it. I want to swear at them, curse at them with a loudspeaker to release my anger. But I know this wouldn't solve the issue. What can I do?
Buy a rabbit. If you buy a rabbit, and then you can give the lettuce to the rabbit every day and make use of it.
好，如果你买一个兔子的话，你就可以把丢下来的垃圾，如果有生菜的话，可以丢给它，你就可以好好的利用这个垃圾。Okay.
But otherwise, we'll say there. I would presume that the person who asked this question has a lot of suppressed anger, probably due to many other conditions in their life right now, whether it's the stress of lockdown or whatever. And then when that is the case, then we usually look for something or other we can say is an appropriate, a reasonable object of anger. And this is why the lettuce and the person dropping the lettuce become the scapegoat for this. But if you're getting so angry about something which is not causing any serious damage to your property or your health or your livelihood, then it means that you're really having to, it's a signal that you have some anger in your heart that you really need to look at. And even if the person who dropped the lettuce stopped doing that, then I think you find something else to get angry about. So I don't think it's the lettuce is the problem. So I would recommend you to really do some loving kindness meditation.
那除此之外，我也假定可能有其他的原因对这份问题的这位贤友，他可能因为其他的一些情况，比如说这次的这次因疫情带来的封锁，而在内心中存有非常多被压抑的嗔怒、愤怒。如果是那种情况的话，我们必须要找到一个更合适的在那样的情况下，我们通常会找到一个合适的去愤怒的对象比如说扔垃圾的这个人，他好像是一个替罪羔羊，但实质上，如果这样的一个丢垃圾的行为对你的生活没有造成严重的这个伤害的话，那很有可能这是一个信号，这个信号表明你必须要去观看一下你自己内心的嗔怒，并且如果没有这样的人，如果没有丢这垃圾的人的话，也许你会找到其他的人对他去发怒。那在这种情况下，我会建议你用慈心观的方式来做禅修，来解决自己嗔怒的问题。
I think that when anything that has a negative impact on us, we usually tend to assume that there is a malevolent intention behind it, that someone is doing that deliberately to hurt us or annoy us. But in this case, I don't think that person can be sure of that. And I could imagine a scenario where there is a naughty child in the flat above who's playing with the lettuce in the kitchen and just out of high spirits and playfulness throwing them out the window. So I think if you consider that alternative scenario, it's hard to get angry. And so the anger is based upon unproven assumptions about the intention of the person also. So when we get angry, there's a lot to learn about that. What are the thoughts and the attitudes and the assumptions that lead us to become angry, and we can deconstruct that, and we can learn a lot from these occasions where we have this strong irrational anger.
那当我们受到一些负面的影响的时候，负面的伤害的时候，有时候我们会假定伤害我们的人可能背后有一个坏的企图，他们是在故意伤害我。但在今天我们谈论的这个情况下未必是如此，他也有可能是一个淘气的小孩子在兴高采烈的从厨房当中把垃圾丢出来，丢出窗口，仅此而已。如果你了解这样的情况之后，很难就会产生嗔怒的一个情绪。有时候当我们对做这个行为的人的企图有一个没有被证实的假定的时候，这种情况经常会发生。那当这个嗔怒升起的时候，其实有非常多的值得我们学习的东西。 到底什么导致的嗔怒？我们可以去解构它，并从中学到许多。Okay, next question. 第9个问题，如果佛陀在世，他将如何给疫情当下的居住的上海弟子开示？ If the Buddha was still alive, what teaching would he give to his disciples in Shanghai who are currently in a lockdown situation?
Well, he would teach exactly what he taught 2,500 years ago. This is a timeless teaching, and the suffering of many of the people in India at the time that the Buddha was alive was comparable to or exceeds that of people in Shanghai. And I know that it's been a terrible and very difficult time for many people, but at the same time, if you consider that you have a roof over your head, you have clothes to wear, you have access to food and water, it's not the end of the world. It's tough, it's unpleasant, it's upsetting in so many ways, but it's not the end of the world. And so the teaching that the Buddha gave and said was the primary or the supreme incinerator of defilement, which is the cause of dukkha, of suffering, is patience. And patience means being able to bear with the unpleasant and not allow the mind to get caught up in negativity and anger and depression and despair. These are all paths that the mind can take or choose to take, but there is no necessary relationship between difficulty and discomfort and fear and so on, and all these negative thinking, all this negative thought. It's something that we participate in, that we give ourselves to. So the question is, given the situation we find ourselves in, and wherever it is, and whatever part of the world, and whatever the challenges might be, as Buddhists, the challenge is, how do I look after my body, speech, and mind in this situation? It's not how we would like it to be, and we can feel it's being poorly handled. It could be have been dealt with so much differently and so on, but it's not. It's like this. And this is the reflection that our teachers give it. It's like this. It's this way. So what are you going to do about it? How can you take care of your mind in this situation with this particular challenges? I have students in Ukraine who tell me about their life now, and it's a monk, a student in Ukraine. And so, there is terrible suffering all around the world all the time. And so we say, yeah, this is my suffering. It's like this right now. How can I deal with it the best I can? And that's, I can't say that's what the Buddha would teach, but that's what I would like to teach this evening.
Thank you, Ajahn. 回答这个问题，佛陀其实如果他在世的话，他所教导我们的，跟他在2500年前教导的并不会有不同，会是一样的，因为他的教导是 不随时间不随时间转换的。当时在他教导的时候，印度的百姓其实也生活在非常大的苦难之中，他们的苦难与我们现在的相当，甚至远超于现在上海所面临的这些困难。但是在现在，如果你考虑一下我们还有这个头上的屋顶，以及我们能有这个喂饱自己的食物，这并不是世界的末日。对，它也许非常的困难，也许在非常多不同的方面是令人非常不愉快的，但这并不是世界的末日。那教导的基本的教导，对于这个造成苦难的这些染污的最基本的教导就是耐心。在困难与不适当中，并没有一个必要的，或者说必要的一个联系。通常很多时候，这些负面的情绪是我们在不同的状况当中所给予自己的。不管我们在世界的何方，作为佛弟子，我们最大的挑战是如何去照顾我们的身口意的行为。也许世间上的不同的状况并不尽如人意，但是它就是这样去反思我们的老师教导我们的，它就是这样。你如何能够善护念以应对你所在的这个处境以及挑战。我有一个在乌克兰的僧人弟子，他也遭遇了非常多的一个苦难，现在全世界范围内都有许多非常可怕的一个灾难痛苦。但对我们来说更重要的是，我们如何尽自己最大的能力去面对这一切。我想这个未必是佛陀会给你们的教导，但至少这是我今天想分享给大家的我的教导。Okay. Tana John, we have gone through 9 questions. There's quite a lot. Is the time still okay for you?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Question number 10. 疫情当下的上海，大部分在上海的人几乎每天都可以看到排山倒海的负面消息，当然也看到一些救死扶伤、邻里互助的温情文章。在这个特别的时期，请老师为我们上海弟子开示，如何身处一个负能量很大的环境，作为一个佛弟子，如何不为外境所转，如何更好觉知安住其心。作为一个佛弟子，如何轻睹看到一些邪恶的势力去欺压弱势群体，我们该如何去面对这些恶势力而不生嗔恨心，保持平等心。In the lockdown Shanghai, almost every day, the locals are exposed to tons of negative news, together with some warm-hearted articles, such as rescue the dying and injured one, or the mutual aid between neighbors. In this special moment, can Tana Jiang expound to us the disciples in Shanghai on the following question? In the middle of an environment full of negative energies, how, as a Buddhist, cannot be how as a Buddhist can we not to be disturbed by the externals? How to be more mindful and find a peace in our mind? As a Buddhist, when we witness the oppression from the evil groups to the less fortunate ones, how should we relate to those evil powers without triggering anger in the mind and maintain equanimity?
Yeah, well, moment by moment, we have choice. And we have choice to follow the path of defilement, of greed and hatred and delusion, or follow the path leading out of greed, hatred and delusion. And there are always pressures and temptations to follow the path of defilement, whatever the situation might be. So again, returning to this point that this is the human condition. The human condition is like this. I think that one of the points I often make is that if you have a room with 100 people and you want peace and quiet, every single one of those 100 people has to commit to that. But if you want noise and disturbance, then only 1 out of the 100 is necessary. So there is an inbuilt or inherent asymmetry, imbalance between the effect or the impact of people acting badly over people acting well. Always a very small number of people acting badly will have a disproportionate impact on those around them. If you look at the numbers of people who act well in times of difficulty, such as is happening in Shanghai, where people are acting well and helping each other out are in fact in the majority, I would say. And the people who are acting badly and selfishly, they impact everybody. They impact anyone who hears of their behavior and emotionally and so on. So the assumption is that most people are acting badly, and there are a few kind of warm-hearted stories just to comfort you and keep you going. In fact, it's the opposite. The majority of people are acting kindly and looking out for each other. And it's always been that way throughout history. So recognizing that is important. So I'll stop there and I'll answer the rest of the question after you've translated.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. 一课接着一课的，其实我们每个人都有选择去追随贪嗔痴这3毒之道，或者去追随一条可以远离他们脱离他们的道路。通常有非常多的诱惑让我们去追随这些染物，不管情况是如何。但是让我回到这个观点，就这是人性的，这是人类的一个条件。如果在这个房间里面有100个人如果我们要保证这个房间非常安静非常平和的话，那每一个这100个人当中的每一个人都必须要承诺自己去保持安静。但如果这个房间要闹哄哄的话，有噪音的话，这100个人当中只要有1个人发出噪音就可以了。所以我们发现在善行跟恶行当中，有时候有一些不成比例的这个影响。比如说我们看一下在上海所发生的这些困难当然我们会发现有很多人可能作恶，但是我相信就是互相帮助然后做善行的人应该是多数而做那些自私的行为作恶的这些人其实是少数。当然我们通常根据我们的一些习惯，我们会假定大多数的人是恶的，少数的人是善的，但是事实上应该相反大多数的人都是非常善良的，而且是照顾的彼此的这在整个人的历史上都是这样的。认识到这一点对大家非常的重要。
An anecdote from history. During the Second World War, it was the policy of the British government and American government to bomb German civilians rather than military targets. And they bombed the 40 most important cities of Germany again and again, with the idea that this would destroy the morale of the civilians supporting the military effort. In fact, it never happened. And the opposite happened, that people came together as never before. And this is not, this is based upon interviews that were done after the war ended, but also it can be measured because the output of many of the factories in these bombed cities increased after this bombing. So under that kind of stress and suffering, the default response was kindness and togetherness and mutual aid. So that is just one example from history. This is not, trying to look at things in a positive light or positive thinking. This is very well documented.
有一则来自于二战的轶事，讲的是英美联军的一个政策。他们当时为了打击德军，决定去轰炸在军事基地附近的一些平民。他们在德国近40个城市进行了轰炸，他们的目的是想要去摧毁平民的这个意志，他们的反抗心。但是与他们的期待相反的，德国的平民反而更团结起来反抗。这个可以从战后的一些访谈中得出这样的结论，同时也是有量化的一些依据的。我们发现在二战之后，德国的在战争之后，德国的一些工厂的数量反而去上升的。我认为在焦虑以及在苦之下，其实默认的一个选择是善，而且善以及团结，而且是互助。这个绝对不只是一个心灵的鸡汤，是一个正向思考，它更是在历史当中是有例子的。
So just returning to this question of oppressors and oppressed, and people who act cruelly and people who are treated badly. The important thing to recognize is that anger is a poison. It is a terrible poison. And why would you drink that poison? For what purpose? When you get angry, you get a short-term boost. And this is a common belief in those fighting against oppression, that the only way that you can sustain long-term opposition to a superior force or power is through anger. From Buddhist point of view, you become part of the problem rather than part of the solution. That with anger, your mind becomes coarse and you develop this very simplistic black and white interpretation of complex events. You paint an unrealistic picture of your opponents as being monsters, and an unrealistically positive impression of yourself and your friends as being good and noble and virtuous. The ability to create positive change is dependent on understanding all the causes and conditions that lie behind the oppression or the unwanted state of affairs, and the angry mind is incapable of investigating and the complex nature of phenomena. So anger, once you accept anger as a motivation, you are on a very dangerous path. And the idea that the end justifies the means, that if you have a good goal, then you should be willing to compromise on the methods you use to realize that goal, then that's been the cause of huge amounts of human suffering since the beginning of history. So anger is based upon a wrong perception of phenomena, and it is a force that emotionally might seem gratifying, but in the long run increases problems rather than reduces or eliminates them.
好，回到这个压迫者与被压迫者的这个关系残酷的以及被错误对待的这些人之间的关系，我们必须要意识到一个非常重要的观点，也就是嗔怒本身就是一个毒药，它是一个非常非常可怕的毒药。如果嗔怒是毒药的话为什么你还要去喝这个毒药？为了什么样的目的？当你可能因为嗔怒而做一些行为的时候，你可能会感受到一个短期内的一个振奋。通常大家都会相信在通过这个嗔怒的这个反应去对抗这些压迫者，可能是最好的解决办法。但是在佛陀的教法当中，这样你只是变成了问题的一个部分，而不是问题的解决。因为在嗔怒当中有一些非常粗糙的非常简单的或黑即白的这样的诠释，对一些比较复杂的问题。有时候我们也不切实际的把我们的对手看作是怪物。我们去创造一些正向的正面的改变的能力，这一切都是基于这个基于这个因缘的条件。对不起，都是基于在这个压迫背后的所有的这个因缘的条件。当你的头脑，当你的心智是充满嗔怒的时候，我们并没有能力去探究、去研究这个现象背后的复杂的本质。当我们接纳嗔怒作为我们的动力的时候，你就在一个非常危险的道路上。这一切都会造成在人类历史上非常多的一个苦难通过这个嗔怒，我们对这个事情有了错误的这个观点。短期内嗔怒可能给我们是一种满意的感受，但是长期它可能会带来更多的痛苦。Okay. So shall I go to the next question? So question 11, 第11个问题，证得菩提或获得佛果，获得解脱，是否就是持续的处于当下，并不存在另一个净土？是这样的吗？ Does the attainment of bodhi or phala or enlightenment mean constantly being with the present moment? There isn't another pure land, is there?
There are many different realms of being, and the Deva realms and the Brahma realms are very refined, very subtle realms of being. So one who has realized the third level of enlightenment, we call anagami, it's called a non-returner. So a non-returner does not realize arahantship in the human realm, but realizes it in the Brahma, one of the Brahma realms. And so there is in the Theravada teaching and understanding a very pure realm where anagamis can realize arahantship. It's a Brahma realm, so there are Brahma gods in that realm. Sorry, you can go ahead.
Sorry for interruption. 在我们存在的这个世界上有非常多不同的界，其中有一个界是梵界。在梵界当中有非常多精微的这个存在和生命。他们通常都已经证悟了这个证悟的第3阶段被称为是不还者。 他们不还者，他们不会在人界去证悟到阿罗汉果，但是他们会在凡界证悟阿罗汉果。在上传部佛教的教导当中，这就是这个不还者他们证悟阿罗汉果的这个净土。Sorry for interruption.
But the liberation for an arahant, one who is still conventionally speaking within the human realm, is one in which their mind is completely free of all defilement, all greed, hatred, and delusion, and in which their motivation is wisdom and compassion. So their minds, with the cessation of defilement, it does not mean that there's nothing going on in their mind. Their minds are distinguished by wisdom, compassion, and inner freedom. This is the enlightened state for one who has realized arahantship, but has not yet ended their life as a human being.
但是也有阿罗汉在人界获得解脱，他们解脱了贪嗔痴三毒的染污，并且他们的动机是智慧以及慈悲，他们的心智是非常的不同具有内在的自由以及慈悲这一群那个证悟的阿罗汉是在人间的。Shall I go to next question, Tana Jiang? Okay. Number 12. 我的问题是关于善巧的行为。在疫情封闭阶段，我发现自己更善于管理自己的情绪，看着他们生气，为他们创造空间并放下他们。然而困难的是下一步，有什么行动需要被采取？通常说自己什么都不能做是非常容易的，但我急迫的感觉要做些什么，令我很惊讶。举例而言，当我被告知当我不知道他人的历史或感受的时候，我怎么可以假定自己有能力去帮助他们？有时候要做非常困难的选择，其他时候好意或导向无意造成的后果。有任何的指导原则可以让我们更善巧的采取行动，还是说只能从试错中找到答案？谢谢您。My question is about the skillful action. During the lockdown, I find myself getting better in managing my own emotions, watching them arise, creating space for them, and letting go of them. However, the difficult part is the next step, what action to take, if any. Often it is very easy to say there is nothing that I can do, but I sense the urge of doing something. This surprised me. For example, I was told that if not knowing other people's history or emphasizing her pain, how can I assume that I am capable of helping them? Sometimes, extremely difficult choices have to be made. Other times, good intentions lead to unintended results. Is there any principle to guide us to skillful actions, or the answer could only be found, or yes, the answer can only be found from mistakes? Thank you. How to live peacefully in the present moment? How can wisdom arise? How can we face the anger in our mind?
Yes, I think that sort of short answer is that we have to learn from our mistakes, and that there isn't any kind of textbook answers to these daily challenges and complex situations and relationships, and the question of what is right, what is wrong is it's almost impossible to know beforehand. This is why academic studies do such a poor job of preparing people for real life, because when you take a test at school, you know that the question has an answer, and it has one answer usually, and that you have all the information that you need in order to answer the question. These are the givens in an academic test. But in real life, of course, then you don't even know if you're asking the right question. You don't know if you have enough information on which to act. There are so many things that you don't know, and yet you can't wait for the information that you would prefer to have in your hand before acting. So there's always a certain amount of faith, and we can even say gambling in any kind of action. But the Buddha told us to take refuge in our intention and our volition and recognize whether or not our mind is motivated by wholesome dhammas. And so the more closely we look at the mind, the more we are able to let go of the defilements of whether it can simply be restlessness or wanting some kind of tangible result and something to be able to point at and say, yes, I achieved this, I achieved that. Wanting to sort out other people's lives because sorting out one's own life is just too difficult. There can be all kinds of motivations involved. So the closer and clearer you see your own mind, then the more you are capable of making good decisions. But you will make mistakes for sure, because there's no kind of perfect position where you can say, now whatever decision I make will be right, because as you say, the implications, the consequences in the world are uncontrollable. There can be all kinds of things that happen which we cannot predict. Of course, the pandemic is obvious, clear-cut example of this. So we do things with a humble heart and saying, well, I'm doing the best I can. I've looked at this from every side. I've tried to calm my mind and free my mind from prejudice and from defilement, and this is what seems to me right now to be the correct and the best thing to do, but without any expectation that the result will necessarily be a satisfactory one.
我们永远是从错误当中去学习，我们永远是从错误中学习的。对于这个日常的挑战以及关系的很多问题，永远没有教科书式的答案。很多时候我们没有办法预先去找到这个对或者错的这个对这个问题的一个对或者错误的这个解答。我们都知道学者其实在现实生活中经常做得非常的糟糕，就好像我们在做测试的时候，做一个测验的时候，你就知道有一个答案，并且通常很多时候都只有唯一的一个答案，因为我们有帮助我们解答的所有的一些必要的一些条件，但是在现实当中很多时候我们不知道这是不是一个正确的问题，我们不知道是否我们有足够的信息，有时候我们就好像是在赌博一样，对我们的这个行为这不是我们所推荐的一个做法。那我们应该做什么呢？我们应该去归依于或者在我们的动机、我们的意志以及我们的意志当中去找到归依，去找到比较好的这个动力我们要去保证自己的这个心智是有这个善或者健全的念头所鼓励的并且去放弃尽可能的放弃一些染污不管是可能是一些不安，或者简单的来说只是放下自己对 对于一些结果的期待又或者是说去放下我们想要去解决别人的问题，仅仅因为自己的问题好像太难了，所以我想解决别人的问题当我们就是更亲近的更清晰的来观看我们自己的头脑、自己的心智，我们就可以更好的做决定。当然我们会可能在这个过程当中我们会犯一些错误，因为我们并不是在一个完美的立场知道自己做一个绝对正确的一个选择，有很多没有办法控制的、没有办法预期的事情，就好像这一次的疫情就是一个非常清晰的例子。但是我们可以做的是什么呢？我们可以说我非常谦卑的说，我已经尽我所能做到了最好我去看了所有不同的面向，我保持平静，然后我尽量没有偏见，然后没有受染污的影响。那在这样的情况下，这看起来好像是我能够做的最好的一个决定。当然与此同时，我们也不应该对这个结果有任何的期待，是好或者坏。Okay. Tanner Chan, I know it is getting very late. Would you like to take a couple more questions according to your time?
Okay. Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. Sorry, I may combine one question to the previous, so I asked this again. Question number 13, 第13个问题，如何安住当下？智慧如何升起？如何面对内心的恐惧？ How can we stay in the present moment? How can wisdom arise? How can we face the fear in our minds?
Well, first of all, the question, staying in the present moment, to clarify here, that doesn't mean that we cannot think of the past or the future when we're staying in the present moment. It's not possible. We're always having to draw upon our experiences and our knowledge from the past in order to function in the present. We also have to make plans for the future. What do we do first? What do we do after? We can't just dwell moment by moment and say anything with the past and the future is out of bounds. But the recognition is that the past is memory and the future is thought. So as we experience it, our past is presently manifesting memory, and the future is presently manifesting thought or imagination. So having that awareness of mental activity as presently occurring mental activity is a sustainable way of dwelling in the present.
我想要澄清的是，首先我想要澄清的是，安住于当下，并不是说我们不去思考过去或者未来，这是不可能的。我们永远必须从过去去汲取知识，我们也必须为将来做很多的这个计划我们不可能只是活在当下，不管未来或者过去但是我们必须认识到，过去仅仅是一种记忆将来只是一个念头、一个想法。那过去只是在当下，过去是以记忆的这个形式去显现自己的。那在当下，将来也是以这个念头的形式来显现自己所以我们必须把过去和将来仅仅看作于在当下显现的一个心智的一个状态。
So our ability to do this is dependent upon formal meditation practice. That's when we devote a certain length of time and we create the most supportive conditions. And focusing on a meditation object is training oneself to be in the present moment. And as the mind is drawn away from the meditation object by thoughts and memories, one realizes and returns to the object and is now being able to recognize the obstacles to mindfulness as mental states that arise and pass away. So there is a movement towards letting go of identification with mental states by this very simple means of focusing on a meditation object. Focusing on the meditation object illuminates mental formations.
我们能够达成这一项事情的一个能力，是基于我们正式的禅修的练习，也关乎到我们每天花多少的时间以及我们练习的一些条件。那其中有个很重要的方法，就是去聚焦于我们的禅修的对象，来帮助我们自己更好的去安住于当下。当我们从自己的禅修对象被抽离的时候，那我们就要去回归到禅修的对象，让我们意识到这一份抽离。那当这个我们发现有障碍升起的时候，我们也要带着正念只是把障碍当作是一种可以会升起和消逝的一种心智的状态。我们必须去放下对于这个心智状态的一个认同，通过这种简单的方式来聚焦在那个禅修对象上。那禅修对象的聚焦在禅修对象的这个方式，可以照亮我们这个思维的一个形成，我们的心。Okay, Tenachan, maybe one last question. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, just I haven't answered the question about fear, and fear is another impersonal, impermanent mental phenomena, and the practice of mindfulness means that you become more and more sensitive to the changes in the body and mind in the present moment. So I often talk about the present moment as the classroom. It's not like being in the present moment is the goal, but it is entering the classroom, as it were, in which you can observe the body and mind directly. So any mental state has a beginning. And if you can be there and present at the beginning, then it's very easy to let go. And fear has a beginning. And if you are observant of the pattern and the changes that take place in the physical body, in the mind, as fear arises, it can be very easy to abandon. If fear has already arisen, it's quite strong, then the first thing is to prevent the vipawa tanha. This is the craving not to be, not to feel, not to be like this. So this is how we make things much worse, by desiring them not to be there, not wanting to feel like this. So we counter this by fully accepting in the present moment and scanning the body from the head to the toes and observing how fear feels. So we're making fear as the object of awareness. So not pushing it away and trying to repress it, and not following it and believing in it, but simply being aware of fear as a phenomena of body and mind. And that intention to be aware is what purifies the mind. We're not feeding the fear anymore because of the intention to be aware of it, and the fear will fall away.
好，那接下来我们讲一下恐惧。那恐惧其实也是一种无常的一种心智的一个现象。 当我们有更多正念的时候，我们就可以更清晰的来看到在当下的这个时刻，身体或者心智中的一些改变。我经常说，当下这一刻其实更像是一个教室。这个教室提供给我们一个机会，去直接的去观察我们的身体和心智。在其中我们会发现，心智的状态会有一个起始点。当我们发现这个起始点的时候，就更容易的把这个心智去放下。就好像如果我们讲到这个愤怒的话，愤怒也有一个这个起始点。如果我们去观察到这个起始点，观察到愤怒带给身体和心理的这样的一些变化，有什么样的一些惯性的一些状况，那当我们观察到这一点之后，就会更容易的去放下这个心智的状态。当有时候我们会发现恐惧非常强大的时候，非常强大的时候，有些时候我们会好像有这样一种渴望，好像就是远离，没有这样的一种情绪。当我们有这样的一种渴望的时候，有时候情况会变得更糟糕。我们对待这样的情况的方式是充分的去接纳当下的这一刻从头顶到脚趾去扫描自己的身体，去观察我们的恐惧到底感觉起来是怎么样的，去把恐惧作为一个禅修目标不要去推它，不要去对抗它，也不要去跟随它，仅仅是非常简单的去觉知恐惧作为一个身体或者心智的一个现象这样的方式可以帮助我们更好的净化我们的心智，并且不会去喂养我们的这个恐惧。Tanaja, it's getting very, very late. Are you okay with the question? Shall we call it a day? Or would you like to answer more?
It's much later where you are than it is here. How many more questions are
there? We have 8 questions.
Yeah. Maybe leave it till next time. We'll have another session.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea. Yeah. So thank you so much again, Tanaja, for your time. It's as your disciples in Shanghai and all over the world, I think it's very beneficial for us to learn at this time of uncertainty. Let us all bow to you for 3 times to show our respect. 让我们大家一起感恩尊者的这个教导，我们一起向尊者礼拜3次，表达我们的敬意。
I would just like to say something. Just before.
Okay, please.
Yeah,
please.
I just on behalf of myself and all the group here today, I think we'd like to thank Harry for his work of translation. I know it's real hard work to keep going for an hour and a half translating like this. And although, as you know, my Chinese is not good enough to be able to say it was a good translation, but I'm very confident that it was. And so thank you for all of us.
非常感谢尊者，刚才尊者也是代表大会感谢我，尊者也代表大会感谢我，尊者也代表大会感谢我的这个翻译。那因为本人的这个修为有限，能力有限，可能在翻译的过程中有错漏，也希望大家可以原谅。我以后会一定继续的努力。感谢大家，也感谢尊者。Thank you so much, Tanaja. OK， 那我们大家一起向尊者拜礼3次，好。